Thanks for joining us in the SBP podcast, the voice of mobile film. You are listening to episode 16, and I am your host, Susie Botello. We're going back to Perth in Australia to talk with Brian Hennings. He is coming back to the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego, April 28th and 29th, with a new film, Focus. The main topic we discuss with him is how films and videos send a message to the audience and why a story is such an important focus for filmmakers. Our Patreon page has a bonus episode with Brian where he discusses tips to help all filmmakers with story structure. Story structure is a must in all films and videos. You will be glad to listen to this one because story structure can help you get your film into film festivals and actually win awards. Our Patreon page is at www.patreon.com/SBP podcast. We'll add a link to our show notes. We just listed the names of all the filmmakers whose films were officially selected to be a part of the 7th official International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego. We want to give a huge shout out to Lulu Films and Swords of Secretary Studios from San Diego for their sponsorship. You can visit their websites from our homepage at www.internationalmobilefilmfestival.com and you can click on their logos. Okay, let's go to Australia now and talk with Brian. Hey, Brian, how are you? How's Perth?
Perth is great. Hi, Susie. How you doing?
Doing fantastic. Good to hear from you again.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me back on.
Yeah, you bet. Some of our listeners may, they probably weren't with us from last time, so they may not know. But we interviewed Brian on episode 3, so you may want to go back to that later and listen to it. But Brian was one of the filmmakers in our last film festival last year. Now that we're into the new year of 2018, I can say last year. Brian made a film called Express, and it did very well, and it had a really good story to it and got a lot of recognition from that. Even there, didn't you get on the news and everything there, or the newspaper?
Yeah, we got interviewed by a local newspaper over here. Express got selected into multiple festivals. Was screened in San Diego, obviously. Over in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Toronto. So yeah, we were pretty happy with how that one turned out.
Wow, that's awesome. And now you, so listeners, okay, now listen up. So Brian. Brian actually made another film, and he made another film called Focus, which is going to be, it was selected in our film festival. And I don't want to say it was better, but there were some, I mean, to be honest, it's hard to say that because both films, you shot them both with the same phone, right? The Samsung, or was it
Samsung Galaxy S7?
Yes.
Yeah.
So both films were shot with the same phone. So for some reason, I have, the next time someone asks me what Android phone is good, that I can afford, right? Except for that new Pixel phone. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say, get a Samsung Galaxy phone.
Yeah.
Because the quality on the footage was great. But there's something else that Brian puts behind in his films. It has nothing to do with his footage. It has to do with the story. And so going there, Brian, Why don't you share just a little bit about what brought you into the mobile filmmaking world, basically, and a little bit about uh, basically yourself and how you what you basically. I guess we could start a little bit with last year, and then we'll talk more about your film this year.
Mm. So I guess I became interested in film as a storyteller and as a writer, and that was kind of my dream at the start was to be able to come up with stories and tell them in a compelling way. And originally my plan was I'm just going to write this stuff and I'll give it to someone else and they can make it. And then I very quickly got an education that the film industry doesn't quite work that way. And so I needed to become more involved in filmmaking. And I kind of went along a pretty traditional route, working with people that make films, and kind of joining forces with them to work with a director to tell my story and things like that. Um, and then it was really through your film festival that we really cottoned onto the idea that using a smartphone to tell a story is a viable option. Um, so with Express, we set out with the purpose of telling, like coming up with a story and telling it in such a way that it suited smartphone filmmaking. And I used my normal team around me. James Corker was our DOP for this one for Express. And so he brought all of his film knowledge into using a smartphone to tell that story. Um, so and we were surprised by while there are differences, how similar the process is. It really is filmmaking, and the smartphone is a tool that you use to tell a story. And I'm a big believer in the idea that filmmaking is storytelling. You want a film to look good, you want the actors to be great and things like that, but all of that is kind of irrelevant unless you're telling an engaging story along the way. And I think that was one of the things that I was so pleased with the Express, which dealt with the issue of mental health and how people cope with being exposed to mental health issues, both as individuals and as people interacting with individuals with mental health. And as a result of that film, we got a lot of positive comments from people who indicated that it really touched home with them that this is a realistic depiction of things, and it portrayed realistic emotions for people. So this was a film that was going to be harder to make using any other kind of camera other than a smartphone for the way that we shot it. So smartphone filmmaking really allowed us to tell that particular story, and also through festivals like yours and others that we entered into, getting that story out for people to see. It really is an excellent way to make films.
Well, most definitely. You said something there that I think you should quote that whenever you uh, give a lecture or interview or whatever, but just stick to that. I love it. Um, Filmmaking and storytelling. I really, really think that hits home. Probably because I share that same vision with you. That it's exactly that, but to just say that more often because I think it's easy to forget. Um, Mainly not so much from the viewer's perspective, of course, because I think a viewer does expect a story when they go to see a film. I think it's from the perspective of the filmmaker with all the toys and everything that, all the elements of filmmaking. It's easy to forget in the end, right? That you are telling a story.
Absolutely, yeah. You think about any time that you watch anything from short films through to features to TV stories, the thing that keeps you engaged, that keeps you sitting there for 2 hours in the cinema, or keeps you binging something over the course of a weekend, is that compulsion to find out what's going to happen. The drive of the story that pushes you forward to work out, or to discover at the end what it was all about. So yeah, I really, I can't push storytelling enough in this form.
You know, when we spoke last time, um, you were in our third episode. So since then, we've had discussions through this podcast with some of the people that you met during
Mm,
our film festival. Like one of them was Claudino. Remember Claudino
mhm.
Andres Gomez
Yep, yep.
from Chile. The other
Hmm.
one, let me see, who was the other one? Ari from
Hmm.
How I Became a Movie Theater Murder.
Great film,
And
that one. Yep.
I know, right? And then we also spoke with two people from that film Figment. I know you met Javier Nunez, who was in our film festival. He was the producer.
Hmm.
But we also spoke with Mithran, who was the director, and we also spoke with Ava Blackwell, who was the protagonist in that story. Such a moving story. Um,
Absolutely.
and these are every one of these that I just named. All had a wonderful story with their films. Um, but I kind of wanted you to remember them. Not that you forgot. I know that you're still in touch with them. Um, and this is really funny. I was talking to Aaron Nabus,
Hmm.
and I was talking to him today, and I said, "Oh, I'm gonna be, for our podcast, I'm gonna be talking to Brian." And he says, "Oh, hey, tell Brian that I said hello." um, but actually, he told me to say something. I'm unlocking my phone. I'm gonna look at his text message because he said something really funny. He said, "Tell Brian that I said good day." So that must mean something to you. Maybe it was a little discussion or something you guys had about how to say good day or something in Australia.
Yeah, that comes up quite often when Australians travel overseas, is exactly how to say it, and it's one of those funny things that Australians seem to have this innate ability to say it correctly, and no one else in the world can. Um,
How do you say it?
it's oh, I don't want to do it now.
Oh, come on.
Uh, I'll drop it in later. No, it's one of those really weird things, and I'm sure that every culture has that, where there's something that is so inherent to that culture that it's really hard for someone else to kind of get just the right nuance on it, and
Right.
things like that. I don't want to say it, because as soon as I do that, any Australian that's listening to the podcast will go, "He didn't do it right." So
That's like in California with dude. There are only
exactly.
30 different ways of how to say that, right? Depending, there's a little bit of an emotion. You can say it in a good way or in a bad way. You could go dude, or you can go dude.
Mm.
Each one of those just means something completely different.
You could have a whole 3 minute long conversation saying only "dude," but
Right?
you kind of with the different inflections, and yeah.
There's
And that,
probably a skit
again,
somewhere, right? Don't you guys
oh,
have skits that do that, that will take
yeah.
a word like that and just overdo it just for fun?
Absolutely, and again, that's another bit of filmmaking that I really enjoy is bringing in those elements. I'm an Australian, and I make films, and I'm aware of other places in the world, but there's always going to be an Australian slant to the films that I make or the stories that I tell. Um, and the US culture and the Australian culture aren't so different. They're not the same, but they're not so different. And then you get the ability for people from other nationalities to be able to tell stories that are relevant to them and in their voice. Again, the smartphone has allowed this diversified group of people to get their stories told. It's amazing technology.
I want to just read for listeners really quick, if you don't mind, that I read your synopsis.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. When her worldview is irreversibly changed, and every woman must struggle to overcome the way others now see her. So, talk a little bit about. I mean, I don't want you to. I mean, it's not like it's a suspenseful film, you know. I don't want you
No.
to like explain your film. I do want people to come to the film festival and see it. But tell us a little bit about that because of the message and the story and how you put that together.
Yeah, I guess it's really hard to talk about a movie that's under 5 minutes long without talking a lot about what happens in the movie. But the idea, the basic theme behind this story is around how as individuals, things can happen to us that change us, and can change us in ways that are perceptible to others. So you've now not only had a change, but other people realize that there's been a change, and how while on one hand you have to personally deal with the changes that you're going through or experiencing, you also have to deal with other people's perceptions of you and the way that they may now treat you, and that kind of concept. I guess it's a little bit following on from Express and that idea of the interactions that we have with people and how important they are. So this again, I don't know why smartphone filmmaking works so well for this, but this is a personal story for me. Without giving away too much, it's based
Right.
on a family member of mine and her life story. Um, so it touches on some very real ideas and themes and experiences. And I don't know that I can really say much more without
Yeah, I know,
giving
and
away
I
too
don't
much of
want you
what
to
happens.
say too much
Yeah,
more. But it is kind of like the concept. I'm listening to you, of course, and I'm thinking about how, it's not just how someone perceives you, it's how it affects them. That
yeah,
was I think I got that more from, I wouldn't say more, but I got that a lot from Express on how this one moment passing by, right, that individual ended up affecting her,
yeah,
throughout the film and then
yeah,
after, right? And so that is the thing. That's kind of like this thing about being more mindful as people with one another. that it plays into, because sometimes people aren't aware that by not being, I it's not so much careful, but there is some of that too. But to be a little more observant and mindful, period. I mean, with others, that if we're not going to do that, it is still going to affect us. It's just probably going to have a different effect,
Mm.
a more negative effect.
Yeah, and likewise, the way that you interact or don't interact with people can have a big impact on them. You know, the before we had a quick chat before we started the podcast, and we were
Yeah.
talking a little bit about some of the social issues, and we touched on homelessness. And I remember reading something about that was written by a person who was homeless, and they said the part of the problem that they experienced was that people treated them like they weren't there. It was like they would walk past, they wouldn't make eye contact, they wouldn't talk to them. Um, and over a prolonged period of time, the kind of impact that that would have on an individual of kind of knowing that they're there in a place but being treated as if they're not. It's really that thing where we're all humans, and humans are built on social interaction and things like that. So the ways that we interact with each other it's kind of a theme that really I seem to come back to for some reason. But it's a fertile ground to kind of tell stories around.
It's such a sad thing. As I'm hearing you say that, I kind of actually got pretty sad about it because it's true. We do forget that that people are, you walk by, you don't look, but you keep going, and it's your head, your world, your life, right? But that person is
Mm,
still there, feeling their world, and their moment is prolonged. It doesn't just go away because you walked away.
mm,
And they're stuck there, and that, time and time and time and time again, uh, they're getting that same reaction from people. And what we go
mm.
on in our world, comfortable, it's kind of like someone who's in a hospital, right? Lying in their
Yeah,
deathbed, and you go to visit them, and for that moment you're like, oh, that's so bad, and then you walk out and you go to, I don't know, go have a hot dog or something, I don't know. um and meanwhile they're laying there, and you're thinking, oh, but they're dying, they're there, and they're like, having a hard time. And I don't know, it is a very, very sad thing. And it's something that really does make good stories, though, because the power of stories is that a lot of times it does affect. I mean, it does cause empathy, towards other people, so that maybe you can understand, maybe that moment, you walk away, it's your life, whatever. But in that story, that movie that you're watching, you're still, that's you walking away, but the story is really with that homeless person and how that affected them. And so you're
mm,
faced with that, and then you start thinking, I just walked by someone who was homeless yesterday, and I did that. I didn't see, because I just kept walking, but I didn't see how that affected them. But now that I'm watching this movie, I get to see that, you know.
yeah. I mean, well, there's that old saying about walk a mile in someone else's shoes, and
Mm.
storytelling, whether it's through film or books or however, when the protagonist is, whatever the protagonist's situation is, it's a perfect opportunity for all of us to walk a mile in their shoes and see things from their perspective, and see that the boss at work who comes in to and is really mean to all of his staff might be someone who has a whole lot of other problems going on outside of his work. And while it might not excuse his actions, it might explain kind of how he is the way he is, or that person who always seems quite morose. You might find their backstory, or that person who is super, super happy all the time. You might find out why they're like that, or again, it's one of those exciting things about storytelling is that you have that brilliant opportunity to step into someone else's life for just a moment and experience things how they might experience it. So, and again, I'm going to keep coming back to this smartphone filmmaking stuff because
Yeah.
it is a smartphone podcast. But the fact that people from diverse backgrounds can now have the tools to be able to tell stories that might not otherwise get told if you're relying on a Hollywood studio to fund something. It's a really exciting time for filmmaking.
Yeah, that's exactly, it's one of the things where I found this to be very powerful because it empowers people who have never had access to a camera who now do, and hey, it's with me already. If you see something that's a great story, I mean, we all have our own stories, but we live around, we're in a society that's filled with stories. And you might think, you know what, no one else is sharing this story, this one story. And why is no one else sharing that story? And my thing, if you were to come up to me, I'm talking to my listeners now, if you were to come up to me and say, nobody's talking about this, what I would tell you is that's because it's up to you to share that story. The story that there are gazillions of stories to be had everywhere, especially if you're a creative person, right? With
Mm,
our imagination and everything. But if there's a story there somewhere that keeps bouncing around in your head, then there's a need for you to tell that story. And you have a phone, you have the camera, and you should just do it and start because even if you think you can't do it, nothing can stop you from trying when you have the tools available, right?
mm. Absolutely. I mean, I think we might have touched on this last time I was talking. The wonder and the beauty of this kind of filmmaking is that you can give it a go. If it works really well, it's great. If it doesn't quite work out, then you've got the tool there to do it again until you get the story told the way you want it to be told. Um, it really comes down to, like you said, getting off your butt
I
and getting
said
it
that.
done.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was paraphrasing. I was speaking a bit Australian then,
No,
and I almost said something that was worse than that. But I
it's
kind of caught
okay.
myself. I remembered we were on a podcast. But yeah, it really it's almost that do-it-yourself aesthetic, which is something that through focus, it was really I was going to say it was really a focus for me on making that is that whole idea of how much can one person do in filmmaking, and with smartphone filmmaking, you can actually do quite a lot.
I do want to bring up something. The the camera on this film, just going back to your film a little bit here.
Hmm.
There are a lot of tools out there, and I think you told me from the last film. I've had so many conversations with so many people, but I'm pretty sure that you told me that you guys used a tripod. You didn't really use a gimbal or anything like that. Am I correct?
Yeah, we shot on tripod mostly. There was one shot which was right at the start of Express, where the camera pans up over a fence, and James, who shot the thing for us, said afterwards, when people found out it was shot on a smartphone, they were, like, how did you do that? And people said that shot at the start, it looks like a crane shot. How did you do that? And he said, well, we used a crane. And so we attached the smartphone to a crane for that one shot. The rest of it was shot on a tripod, and any movement that was in the shot was done in post,
Right.
through digital zooms and stuff like that. Yeah, so and for focus, I went a slightly different road, and we did use a gimbal
I thought
for
so.
focus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
those things are mesmerizing. There was such a fluidity in your camera movements, though, and you used them as a way to transition from one thing to another. I don't want to say too much, but that was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It was a bit of a trial and error on how to get that to work quite right, and there's a lot of stuff that had to go on in the edit to make everything work as well as it did, and even now I kind of look at the finished product and go, oh, I could tweak that a little bit
Oh, of
more.
course you do. We all do that as an artist.
Yeah, at some point you have to lock it, and and with the film festivals being having a hard date there that you have to meet is a prime motivator for
Yep.
going, yes, I need to get this done.
That's why I
Um,
refuse to redo a deadline. I did it several times during my first film festival because I couldn't get a venue. You know what I mean?
right,
And I couldn't
yeah,
get more than, two films, three films, and I was like, "Come on." Plus it was the first one. It was, but other than that, I'm like, "Nope, it's this day, midnight. That's it. Not going to do it because
yeah,
it's not fair to people like you who are just like going crazy trying to meet this deadline to then log on, right? And go, what? You extended it? Are you kidding
yeah.
me? I stayed up all night on this. I missed a day of
Oh,
work, you know what I mean? Whatever.
and you do that thing of like you're exporting the final product, and then you watch it and go, oh, oops, something wrong there, and you got to go back and do it all again and
Right?
stuff like
Yeah,
that, and
and
then the one of the biggest problems that we have in Australia is we're a pretty advanced country, but we don't have very good internet. We're like something like 38th or 54th or something like that in the world on internet speeds, but uploading video takes ages here. So you've kind of got to factor that in when you're trying to get your deadlines. It's like, if I've got a decent sized film, it might take me 8 hours to upload that.
yeah, that's a tough lesson to learn too. I remember that there was someone in India in one of my film festivals. I think it was the second one that I had or something. And I remember this girl, she was in India and she was like, I'm stuck going to a coffee shop. And she said she just could not get her film upload. And this is when films were smaller, you know what I'm saying?
Mm,
But she could not get it uploaded. And I said, stop wasting your time. The time is rolling. And of course, it was the last day, kind of a thing.
yeah.
And I can't remember what time it was for me. I think it was right really close to midnight, but maybe around 11 something when we were talking. I said, make a call, find out if there's an office somewhere that you can, a friend with an office, that can loan you their internet, their Wi-Fi or something for a few minutes so you can, upload the film to us on time.
Mm,
And she didn't make it, and I
yeah.
felt so bad, and I was like, I'm sorry you didn't make it. I feel so mean even saying this in my podcast right now. People are going to go, you're so mean, Susie. But,
Yeah.
I had to stick to that. But yeah, I would stay up, and I still do. I'll stay up through midnight just to make sure I'm not missing an email or something from someone saying they've, with a question even before they get it
Mm.
in. Uh, I really am. I really do care. It's not just all automated for me. um, so yeah. So when you were shooting this, and you said you used a gimbal, was there anything else different that you did? Just in the
Um,
production part.
in the production part, like the biggest thing for me was with Express, like I said a little earlier. I used the team that I normally use to make the film. James shot it, and he's shot a lot of our stuff. So it was people who were good at their part of the job, taking care of that part of the job. So we had an editor on board, we had a sound designer, we had a composer to bring together that express film and make it what it was. And then with Focus, what I wanted to do was take it in totally the other direction and see what I as an individual could do to kind of put in that put it into that mindset of, if I was just someone who went, wow, I really want to make a smartphone film, could I do it on my own? So yeah, from the production side, it was like I filmed every frame that was in that. I edited it. I did the sound recording and all that. The two bits that I didn't do because I simply don't have that talent is I didn't record the voiceover. I had Sarah Harris, who was in Express, and did the voiceover for us. And I used some stock music that was available that fit nicely in with the theme of the film and what I was intending to do. So it was a very different
But you
filmmaking
recorded the
experience.
voice, right? It wasn't done inside of a studio by somebody else, or was it?
No, no. This was it was done at Sarah's place with her standing inside her walk-in closet
Nice.
and with our microphone stuck in there and me standing outside going, okay, well, now next line and stuff like that. So Sarah's great. She's a really talented actress, and love working with her because she kind of gets where the intent is with the writing, and is able to deliver the lines exactly how I want them done. So
Right.
we used a smartphone to film. We had a gimbal for our shots in motion. We had a tripod for our shots that had no motion in them. We had the sound recording equipment that we have sitting around, which other people might not get. But one of the really interesting things, I can't remember if I ever spoke to you about this with Express, but when we were shooting or planning the shoot for that, I got Sarah to do just like a test read for us so that I could get the lines down and get some timing for how we were going to edit it. Um, and that was recorded simply using the microphone on the Samsung,
Hmm.
sitting on her lap, just her reading the lines. And I should show you one day, but I've actually got a rough cut that I edited together with these rough lines recorded, and some figurines to represent the characters.
Huh.
And the funny thing about it is the audio is really decent quality. I don't think that anyone that watched it would be able to tell that it wasn't recorded professionally. So, in focus, we used some decent quality, like mid-range quality audio equipment to record with, but it could just as easily been recorded on a Samsung.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I'm just like I'm just amazed at the quality actually of because as you're talking, I'm listening to you and I'm kind of watching your film in my head, both of them really, and I'm going, God, it's unbelievable, for people, for listeners, this happens in the film industry a lot where you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and what it took to deliver that look and that feel, the sound and everything. People could have gotten knocked out literally to bring that for you. Bones break sometimes. You'd be amazed, especially in action films. Um, but with smartphones, it's a little bit different because it is more do it yourself. And some of the people that are making these movies don't have the professional experience. Now, Brian does have some professional experience, but there are people out there that are coming out with some really good films that don't have that kind of experience. And they're basically just sort of winging it, just sort of creatively trying to figure out. I was talking to one of our guests about smartphone videos and doing selfies. Um, and she was telling us about how you could basically take a coffee cup and cut out little wedges on it and use that as your like gorilla pod, basically, right? Not a
Mm.
gorilla one, but a small tripod, right? And
Hmm.
put your phone in there, and then it'll stay still, and it's on a table, and it's there in front of you. You don't have to hold it. And I was thinking, well, see, when you're what you're seeing as the viewer, it's the other side. You're not seeing where that phone is sitting. Same with the camera. I'm wondering, using the smartphone for this story, for this film, Focus. Were there any elements or any techniques about this that actually benefited from you using a smartphone instead of a bigger or a heavier camera such as a DSLR?
Oh, like there was so many bits that it was easier because a lot of this, like, I didn't go and get permits to shoot anywhere that I shot, not that I shot in a lot of places that would be really noticeable, but having a smartphone isn't isn't exceptional. If you see someone filming with a smartphone on the street, you don't really pay much attention to it nowadays because everyone's got a smartphone and everyone's filming and taking selfies and things like that.
Right.
So it meant that we could, like when I was filming stuff, I could go to places without people kind of looking at me funny or, being, conscious that there's a camera there. It's like super portable, moving it around. They're quite robust in as much as you can move them quickly and you don't have to worry about dropping lenses and stuff like that. So
That's true.
and it's the same with when we were filming with Express. We shot that on a train station, and we would have had a hard time getting permission to film there if we were coming in with a big camera rig or anything like that. Whereas going in with a smartphone and a tripod is kind of low key enough that they don't worry too much about it. There's advantages to whatever tool you're using, and I'm a big believer in that. Like you use whatever tools are required to tell the story that you want to tell, or whatever tools you have, in your possession or easy availability. Um, so smartphones, honestly, with focus, if I had been shooting that with anything other than a smartphone, I wouldn't have been able to get it done in the time frame that I got it completed. It just would have been a way bigger task, and possibly more complex in how to deal with where I'm shooting and how I'm shooting and things like that. So smartphones are the way to go.
Yeah, most definitely. And I wouldn't have wanted you. I would have said sorry. I wouldn't have let you, I wouldn't have broken the rules. I just don't do that with anybody. But I'm glad you made it. And not only because your film is now a part of it and it was selected, but also because you're coming to San Diego again.
Yeah. I the festival last year was so much fun, and I got to meet so many great people. And one of the things, you're kind of touching on it before, of people picking cameras up and smartphones up and kind of winging it.
Yeah.
One of the great things about being in that festival and interacting with that group of people is that we were talking to each other about how we did things, and so as filmmakers, we're going like, oh, that one shot that you had in your film, how did you pull that off? And the great thing about it was that all of the filmmakers were like, oh, well, I'll tell you exactly how I did it. I'll tell you what tools I used and things like that. There's none of this proprietary, oh, I don't really want to tell you how to do that because it's kind of my trick or
Like a
anything.
magician, right?
Yeah. And the reality is, I feel like, the smartphone filmmaking community is one that is very open and sharing, and if there's, I would encourage anyone that's thinking of making a smartphone film or has made a smartphone film and wants to kind of expand their skill set or find out how to do things, is to do things like get in touch with you or me or some of the other people that have been there, and say, how do I do this? How, what's the trick to this, or how do how do you get that? Um,
It's
and
hard
that's
not to share. It really is hard not to share. You
oh,
know?
like you look at it and I often feel reluctance to ask people questions because I don't want to be too prying or anything like that, or I don't want them to say no. And at the festival last year, it was such a great group of filmmakers that gathered there, that were so open and so sharing, and there just seemed to be this desire from everyone there that not only do they want to be good filmmakers themselves, but they want an industry that is filled with other good filmmakers, and kind of everyone raising everyone else up. It's part of the reason why I'm really, really looking forward to coming across for this year's festival.
Yeah.
And that along with touching base with a lot of the friends that I made while I was over there last time.
Yeah, well, remember Anthony de la
Mhm.
Cruz and his daughter Miranda Mullings? I feel like I have
Yep.
to say the the whole name. Uh, but they're definitely gonna be there because Miranda. Now Anthony, as you know, he's an actor, so he's been
Mhm.
super busy all year. Good for him, yay! um, but he wasn't able to submit a film this year. But his daughter Miranda, she just turned 12. I mean, she was 11 last year, so she's only 1 year older, but still, she's very young. She submitted a film this year.
Mm.
So it's just so they're gonna be there. And you know, I told him, I said, Brian's coming again this year. And Anthony got pretty stoked, pretty happy. He was like, "Oh, that's great!" But it's that family type feeling that we all have. Even I see it even on we share, social media. I share with you guys, and regardless of algorithms and all that stuff, right? I do get to see some of the posts that come through my timelines, and I get to see sometimes, you'll post something, or Aries will post something, or somebody else will post something, and then I get to see the likes, right? And
Mm.
who likes or who retweets or who whatever. And I see you guys all still engaged with each other and supporting each other in that way.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
just think it's awesome. I mean, you can't see my smile the whole time you were talking about that, but I'm grinning ear
Yeah,
to ear, like literally.
yeah. I mean, it really is that great opportunity, and because it's a few days there, and you're kind of getting to spend some time with these people, and you can make those meaningful connections, so that even though you're half a world away, you
Right.
still feel part of their experience, and like I love seeing the stuff that the other filmmakers are putting up, where whether they're stuck in an airport in New York over the Christmas break because of
The snow.
storms, or whether they're on a set on acting on a film somewhere. It's just great seeing that these people that I have this connection with are progressing their careers and having fun lives and stuff like that. It's amazing. I'm looking forward to catching up with the ones that can make it back, and I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting some new people that
Oh
that
yeah, you
are
will.
coming to the festival for the first time. So
Yeah, you
yeah,
will,
it'll be.
because I've received word from several of them who are definitely going to be there, for sure. I'm really, for me it's the whole experience, because I'm hosting the film festival, right? So so for me it's like, oh, I got to get these films on there and this and that, and just we just announced the judging panel, and there are three people. Hey, by the way, I might as well just give a shout out to them, right?
Yeah,
With
absolutely.
you, to Jana and Neil Halford, and to Penny Stiles. Is If you go to our website, well, just go to our Facebook or Twitter or anything like that, and you can see the link to their page. But you can go to our website, to the MFF page, and there's a nice photo of the trophies. Those trophies look gorgeous.
I do.
um, and then if you click on those, it'll open up with the judging panel. They've got some pretty awesome biographies on there. So the films they're in good hands. Um, and they're not from the mobile filmmaking world. Really, they are professionals from the industry. So it feels good to put them in their hands. And I know, there are some people that are going, oh, I got the professional judging my film. Oh my God, I have no chance. But you'd be surprised, because the one thing that I think we've emphasized enough is the combination of everything. But what drives your film is the story, right, Brian?
Yep, absolutely. It's interesting as an entrant into the film festival to think about the judging process, and I think everybody who enters a film festival hopes that their film will do well.
Right.
Um, and I think it's that first part is you enter into the festival and hope you get selected for the festival. And then once you're selected into the festival, it's like like, oh, I hope my film does well.
And also, two of those judges, Jana and Neil, they're actually going to be here in San Diego. I could only cross my fingers and hope that Penny will also be there. Wouldn't that be great to get all three judges, here? But they'll be there, and it's going to be really hard for them not to talk with you guys individually about your films before we find out who the winners are at the end of the film festival. But
Yeah.
after, it's a game, like, not to share with you who they selected or anything, but to talk with you about their, give out, if you wanted them to give out a criticism or whatever about your film.
Oh,
You can always
absolutely. I
do that.
think like hearing what people think of your film from anybody, or any creative endeavor that you have, is having someone engage with you as a result of that is an amazing experience. And we were talking before about that whole idea of just people liking your something that you've made, or with the podcast, retweeting the links to it and saying how much they liked it or something like that. It's one of the perks of doing this kind of stuff is that kind of feedback. And I guess that's another thing that we should touch on, is this idea of how do people support creatives, and um, how do you show them that they're valued, and part of it is simply doing things like liking, if they post their podcast on Facebook, hitting that like button is it's almost like a no thought thing that an individual can do, but it means so much to the person that created that work. And so, if you happen to be listening to this and you have friends or family that are making stuff, hitting the like button, sending them a message that says that you really liked it, or whatever kind of thing that you can do, is such a valuable thing to keep people inspired and motivated to continue doing this stuff. And that's again where film festivals are an amazing thing. It's a level of recognition for the work that people are putting into making these films, and giving it an avenue to be shared with a wider audience. So
Um, I have a game. I totally forgot to tell you about this. Um, I know. Remember the shout out game from last year?
yeah,
Okay, well,
yep, I
now
do.
I've altered it a little bit. So now, instead of just doing a shout out, to people, in your case, so I try to customize this game a little bit, depending on the person. And I remember last time you were talking about films in the independent, or not independent, in the international market, right?
Mm, mm,
Um, and that was a big deal for you, that people get out of just watching films from their country or whatever, and to explore into other countries and other cultures and things like that, to watch more international films. Especially here in
mm.
America, we get so many movies here, there's so much of that here that we rarely venture out, right?
Mm.
So, what I was thinking, this is totally putting you on the spot. I gave you no warning about this. Um, um, maybe in 20 seconds that you could name. I'm so sorry, Brian. That you could, I scramble in your head. I'm trying to make this last a little so you can scramble in your head some of these movies that that you that that you've appreciated that are, in the international market? Would that be something you
Okay.
can do? So sorry.
No, no, I'd like, I haven't really heard anything you've said for the last minute or so because my brain has been totally engaged in like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? Um, yeah, but I'll give it a crack. I'll see how we go.
All right, we're gonna give it a crack, guys. All right, so if you're ready, get set. Are you set?
I'm set.
All right, go.
The first thing that I really would like everyone to watch is What We Do in the Shadows, which is a New Zealand film made by the guy that directed Thor. Really great one. The other one is one called End of the Effin' World, which is out of the UK. A brilliant series, very short series,
Wow.
and something you
Sorry.
can watch on Netflix. So those two are things that I really feel give people a view of life outside of the US thing. But if you've got Netflix, they've got all
Oh
the
yeah.
things on there where you can go down to international things and um, see all the different types of films and just scroll through that and find something that you think
And I
looks
suggest that
interesting.
people leave the. I know I'm not the only one that suggests that people leave the natural language, whatever language it is, you know,
Mm,
uh, Japanese or whatever, to actually leave that on there because there's connotations and things that you won't get when it's translated.
yeah,
So to leave that on and just, read the subtitles, you know what I'm saying, instead. I know some people it
yeah,
takes getting used to to watch and read the subtitles at the same time.
yeah,
I
yeah.
realize in some films they go really fast because they have a lot of words. You know what I'm saying? In
Yeah,
per
yeah,
second type thing. Where in other ones it's like it's a little short line and they're still talking.
yeah. And sometimes you know enough of a language to know that they're not translating it,
Oh, well, they're never gonna do
word
that.
for word and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And you're kind of like, well, that's not what that person said, but it's kind of the gist of it.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I do watch a lot of subtitled movies, and you're right in as much as aside from the words, in a script you have the words, but it's also the way that those words are said and things like that add so much. And sometimes if you get a dubbed version of a movie, that doesn't come through quite so well. So yeah, subtitles. Read a good movie every now and again. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and if you're also, I might as well just throw this in here. If you're submitting a film to our film festival based in the US, um, always add like burn them in like the subtitles. Don't say, well, if you turn it on in YouTube, it's like, no, we're not going to do that during the film festival.
Yeah.
We actually need the movie files and then we project them on the big screen. So we're not going to just turn on, we're I don't count on the internet. I can't
Mm,
because anything can
mm.
happen with the internet. But if you have the files, right, then you're pretty much guaranteed they're going to be a part of the film festival. Um,
That's it.
yeah, especially with video. I mean, are you kidding? You never know what can happen with the internet anywhere. So yeah, submit them using this. Have you ever submitted a film to another country and not even question that, Brian?
The only
Sorry,
festivals that
putting
I've
you on the
submit.
spot.
No, no, no. I was just I was thinking of the ones that I've done, and there's been a few in non-primarily English-speaking countries, but most of those countries speak English
Yeah.
as well. So there was no requirement for it to be subtitled in their native language. It was if it's like there was one in Spain. It's like if it's not in Spanish or in English, then you must subtitle it. But if it's either Spanish or English, you're okay. Um, So I haven't had to do that. I have had to subtitle some projects because Australians speaking quickly can be a little bit hard for people to understand sometimes. But even though it's in English, yeah. And
Oh
then
yeah, here's the other thing too. Sometimes it's the dialogue is in English, but it's the people don't speak English clearly, for whatever reason, but most of the time it's because that's really not their first language. So they're just
or
sort of mimicking the language. So you do have to subtitle those. But you should, so that people
or
understand.
there's also things like like one of the things is I think sometimes English speakers don't appreciate the fact that English is so widely spoken around the world and that so many people understand English. But even for places like Australia to the UK to the US, we all speak English, but we speak a slightly different version of it, and the way that we pronounce words might be slightly different, or the terminologies that we use might be slightly different. So it's one of the great things about having films coming in from all over the place is that you get exposed to this, and that's part of why I say people should expose themselves to media that's not created in their own country. Is they get to see those little differences. And get to appreciate that the world isn't exactly how they see it every day. That for other people, it can be a very different experience.
Yeah, and especially like let's say you're making a documentary or something like that, where there is another voice in say that just isn't heard very clearly, because of the sounds in the room, or maybe it's really I know when I did that video, I was talking to the cosplayers at Comic Con, and I was asking them questions, and it was just me doing the whole thing, right? It's not like I had someone
Yeah.
else say. So and one microphone, one phone, one me with two hands, right, holding everything. And I was asking them questions, and so I was pointing the microphone at them, and with the other hand I was holding the phone, recording. And I didn't want to go back and forth, right? Because you can miss it in the traveling of the microphone going to them, right? And me and then them. And so a lot of times, and because it was unscripted, right? You don't know, how that's going to work. Um, I did subtitle my questions because even though you could hear them, I realized that it depends. So if you're listening to it without earplugs on the phone, and with headphones on, it's great. But if you have other speakers, depending on the kind of speakers they are, or if they're really, like stereo speakers, because there was so much noise in the room, you couldn't really hear my question. And sometimes the
Mm,
question is just as important as the answer. So
mm,
I did subtitle those. So sometimes it's not always because of the language, that you want to subtitle something like a video.
yeah. I think the end of the story, and we're going to keep coming back to this storytelling thing, is whether it's a documentary, whether it's an interview, whether you're telling a narrative, drama, comedy, whatever. It's about the story you're telling, and if people can't understand that through not being able to understand the language, not being able to hear it, whatever that case might be, they're not going to get the story that you want them to get out of it. So, it really comes down to you need to do whatever you can to make sure that your story is being told in the most effective way possible. If that means adding subtitles, then add subtitles. If it means re-recording sound at some stage, then do that as well.
Right.
So we have all these tools at our disposal now. I think it's just the case of getting out there and using them.
Good. This is actually perfect timing because we went over an hour and I was enjoying this. I wasn't really keeping track. But this is a good segue into for closing this because I also want to inform the our listeners. Hey guys, um, so our Patreon page, we've asked Brian to talk about. We were talking about the story and the message. We're gonna talk to with Brian. He's gonna share some insights on story structure in our Patreon page. So you'll want to go there and get that. And meanwhile, Brian, we're just like gonna be counting the days into into the hours into the minutes until the film festival. Let's
Yeah,
see.
yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I'm really looking forward to getting over there, and like I said, I'm looking forward to catching up with everyone that I met last time around and meeting some new friends there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everyone's gonna like meeting you as well. So, uh, all right. Well, goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for having me on again, and for the Patreon listeners, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.